The sky above Lumeris burned red and gold. The twin suns were setting, but the light wasn't peaceful. It was filled with the glow of fire from war. Princess Aranel stood on the balcony of the high tower, her armor scratched and her sword still, dripping from battle. Below, the city was chaos. Soldiers running, ships taking off, and civilians being guided to safety. The enemy fleet still hung in the distance like a wall of shadows. And somewhere out there, Captain Rylan was fighting. Her heart pounded. He had gone with the first wave of human ships to push the enemy back, but there had been no word for hours. Every second that passed felt like a blade twisting inside her chest. She clenched her fists. If he falls, if he dies, then everything we fought for will mean nothing. A shout came from the doorway. It was her chief guard, Eldarin. "Princess, the council is calling for you. They say we must abandon the city and retreat to the mountains." "No," she said firmly, turning to face him. "We do not run while humans bleed for us." "But," he began. She cut him off. "I am still your ruler. Prepare the defenses. I will not leave until the last ship is gone." Eldarin hesitated, then bowed and left. Aranel's eyes turned once more to the horizon. Smoke curled into the sky, and the distant sound of explosions echoed like thunder. The enemy strikes back far. Above the planet, Ryland's ship, Valkyrie, was locked in combat with a massive enemy dreadnought. The enemy was the Krith, a reptilian warrior race who believed Lumeris was theirs by ancient right. But they had not counted on humans standing. In their way, Ryland's voice was calm but sharp as he gave orders. "Helm, keep us in their blind spot! Weapons, target their reactor core!" The crew obeyed instantly. The humans were outnumbered, but their tactics were unpredictable. Krith ships were huge and powerful, but they moved like lumbering beasts. Human pilots darted around them like angry hornets. Still, the Valkyrie took hit after hit. The ship shuddered as another blast tore through the hull. "Shields down to 20%, shouted his tactical officer. Ryland's jaw tightened. He knew if they didn't end this soon, they'd be destroyed, and if they fell, the Krith would break through to the planet, and to Aranel. He thought of her face, the way her eyes had widened when she first learned he was her rightful husband. That memory burned in his heart like a star. He would not fail her. On the ground, Aranel moved through the streets, rallying her people. Her voice was strong, even when fear gnawed at her. "Hold the gates. Protect the children. Every moment we fight is another moment our warriors in the sky have to win." The people listened. Even the weakest found the courage to stand. Then, the ground shook violently. A Krith landing pod slammed into the courtyard ahead, smashing stone and sending dust into the air. From the pod, armored Krith soldiers poured out, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The defenders hesitated for just a second, then Aranel charged forward. Her blade flashed in the red light. She moved like a storm, cutting through the first two soldiers before they could even aim. The defenders, inspired by her courage, surged forward to join her. The battle raged. Aranel fought without rest, each strike fueled by her determination to protect her people and the man who had risked everything for her. The turning moment in space on, the Valkyrie, Ryland's crew finally found their chance. "Sir, we have a lock on their reactor." Ryland didn't hesitate. "Fire!" The main cannon roared. A beam of blazing light tore into the enemy dreadnought. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening explosion, the massive ship split apart. The shockwave rolled across space, scattering smaller enemy ships. The humans cheered, but Ryland wasn't smiling yet. "All ships form up. We're going to clear the rest of them." The battle turned. With their largest ship gone, the Krith began to retreat. The humans pressed the attack, driving them farther and farther away from Lumeris. The last stand on the ground Aranel was still locked in combat when the Krith on the ground suddenly faltered. The sky above them filled with streaks of light, human ships returning, chasing the enemy from orbit. The Krith commander on the ground snarled, realizing the battle was lost. He signaled for retreat, and his warriors began pulling back to their landing pods. Aranel, panting and bloodied, lowered her sword. Around her, the defenders let out cries of victory, but she was already running toward the central square, toward the landing zone where she hoped Rylan would come. The reunion minutes later, a human dropship landed. The hatch opened, and Rylan stepped out, his armor scorched, his face tired but alive. Aranel's breath caught. She walked quickly at first, then ran, ignoring the pain in her legs and the bruises on her body. He saw her and smiled faintly. "Your Highness." She didn't let him finish. She stepped close, her voice breaking. "You came back." "I told you I would," he said simply. They stood there for a moment, surrounded by cheering soldiers, the chaos of war fading into the background. In that instant, it didn't matter that their marriage had been arranged by ancient law. They had fought together, bled together, and earned each other's respect. After the war, the Krith retreated fully, their fleets shattered. Lumeris began to rebuild, and the alliance between humans and Aranel's people grew stronger than ever. One evening, weeks later, Aranel and Rylan stood together on the same balcony where she had once waited for news of him. "You saved my world," she said softly. "You saved mine," he replied. "I never belonged anywhere before this. But now, I think I do." She smiled. "Then stay. Not because the law says you must, but because you choose to." Rylan looked at her, the sun's casting, golden light over her face. "I choose too." The war came at dawn. From the palace balcony, Princess Elira could see the horizon glowing red. It wasn't the sun. It was the enemy fleet breaking through the upper atmosphere. Trails of fire streaked across the sky as Dominion dropships descended like hunting birds. The city below erupted in chaos. Sirens wailed, anti-air cannons roared, entire blocks lit up with defensive shield fields, shimmering like glass in the morning light. Captain Darius Kane stood beside her, his uniform torn from the night's fighting, a fresh bandage wrapped around his side. His eyes were fixed on the sky. "They're hitting hard and fast," he said. "Exactly what I'd do." Elira shot him a look. "You sound almost impressed." "Good strategy deserves respect," he replied simply. "But that doesn't mean they'll win." Orders before battle. The palace command center was a storm of activity. Holograms showed Dominion forces landing in 3 main zones: the industrial quarter, the military spaceport, and the palace district. General Karen, head of the Lithan military, looked tense. "We can hold the city for perhaps 12 hours. After that, our shields will fail." Darius stepped forward. "Then we can't just hold. We hit them where it hurts before that shield drops." The general frowned. "And where would that be, human?" "Their forward command," Darius said. "Cut the head off the snake, the rest of the body falls apart. But I'll need the fastest strike team you've got, and the princess." Elira blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "Kyle is leading their political side. He knows the people here. If he dies, the Dominion loses its leverage, and I don't know his mind like you do." The Emperor hesitated. "It is risky." "So is doing nothing," Darius said. Finally, the Emperor gave a slow nod. "Very well. But Kane, if she dies..." "She won't," Darius said flatly. Into the fire an hour later, Elira found herself in an armored hovercraft, speeding through smoke-filled streets toward the palace gates. Dominion dropships had landed nearby, their black hulls sharp against the sky. Soldiers in heavy armor marched forward, weapons blazing. Darius sat opposite her, checking the rifle in his hands. The bandage on his side was fresh, but he moved like it didn't exist. "You still injured?" she said. He gave her a faint grin. "You should see me on a bad day." The hovercraft slammed to a stop as the pilot shouted, "We're here!" The doors slid open, and the team jumped out into the chaos. The street was a war zone, blaster fire cutting the air, smoke from burning buildings rolling between the combatants. "Stay close," Darius barked, moving fast through the debris. His movements were sharp, calculated, never exposing himself longer than needed. Illyra kept her blade ready, her heart pounding. Every shadow could hide an assassin. Breaking through. The forward command post was set up in the remains of an old trade hall. Dominion banners hung from its walls, and a shield dome covered the building. "How do we get in?" Illyra asked. "Like this," Darius said. He tossed a small device toward the shield. It detonated with a sharp flash, causing the dome to ripple and weaken. The team charged. Lithan soldiers laid down cover fire while Darius and Illyra pushed forward. Dominion guards met them at the entrance, their armor gleaming. Darius was a whirlwind, rifle shots dropping 2 enemies before he switched to close combat, slamming another soldier into the wall. Illyra's blade struck fast and true, cutting through the gaps in enemy armor. She moved with the grace of her people, every strike precise. Inside the trade hall, the noise of battle was deafening. But over it all, Illyra heard a voice she knew well. Kale's last stand. Kale stood at the far end of the hall, Dominion soldiers forming a barrier around him. He wore black battle armor now, a Dominion crest across his chest. His smile was cold. "So you came," he said. "I was hoping you would. It will make your death more satisfying." "You betrayed your people," Illyra said, her voice steady, despite the fury in her chest. "I saved them," he said. "Under my rule, they will have power and safety. You would have given them weakness." Darius stepped forward, rifle aimed. "That's a nice speech. Shame it ends here." Kyle's guards opened fire, forcing Darius and Illyra into cover. The fight that followed was brutal. Darius moved like a shadow, taking down soldiers one by one. Illyra fought at his side, the two of them covering each other without needing to speak. Finally, the last guard fell. The dual Kale drew a long plasma blade, its edge glowing bright. "It ends with family," he said, stepping toward Illyra. She met his gaze. "Yes, it does." They clashed in a flurry of strikes. Kyle's blows heavy and powerful, Illyra's fast and controlled. Sparks flew as blades met again and again. Darius circled, watching for an opening, but this was Illyra's fight. Kale's strength began to falter under her precision. With one final strike, she knocked the blade from his hand and held her own at his throat. "Yield," she said. His lip curled. "Never!" Before he could reach for another weapon, Darius stepped in and struck him hard across the jaw, sending him crashing to the floor. "Fight's over," Darius said. "The enemy falls." Back with Kale captured, the Dominion's forward command broke apart. Without orders, their ground troops began to retreat toward their ships. Outside, the sounds of battle slowly faded. The Lithan strike teams pushed the enemy back street by street. Illyra stood over her fallen cousin, breathing hard. She felt no triumph, only the heavy weight of what had been lost. Darius touched her shoulder. "It's done. The city's safe. For now." She looked at him, her voice quiet. "For now." The message from the flagship, just as they prepared. To return to the palace, the sky lit up again. But this time it wasn't reinforcements. It was a single massive ship descending from orbit, its shadow covering half the city. A transmission came through, projected in the air before them. A tall Dominion commander appeared, his armor black and gold. His voice was deep, almost mocking. "Princess." "Illyra," he said. Enjoy your small victory, but know this, we came for you, and we will come again. You belong to us." The image vanished, leaving only silence. Darius's jaw tightened. "Not while I'm breathing," he muttered. Elira looked up at the massive ship still hanging in the sky. It was withdrawing now, but the promise in that message was clear. The war wasn't over. Returned to the palace back in the throne room, Kyle was taken away in restraints. The Emperor listened to the reports, relief mixing with exhaustion. "You fought well," he told Elira. "Both of you." But Darius didn't look satisfied. "They'll regroup. Next time they'll hit harder." Elira met his eyes. Then, "We'll be ready." He nodded once. In the silence that followed, she realized something. This human warrior wasn't just here because of an old treaty. He was here because he refused to let her fall, no matter the cost. The palace felt different now. Where once the tall halls had seemed untouchable, there was now a shadow over every corner. Guards doubled their patrols, scanners swept the air for hidden weapons, and every visitor was questioned. But to Elira, it all felt too late. The enemy was already inside. The problem was finding them. The first clue Elira sat in the royal archives, a quiet chamber lined with crystal shelves holding centuries of records. She had been searching through old security, logs, hoping to find patterns in the palace's movements during the last month. Darius leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You've been at this for hours," he said. "I know," she replied without looking up. "But someone gave the assassins information. That means somewhere there's a record of who accessed it." He stepped closer, scanning the screen. She was reading. "There." Elira followed his finger to a name. Lord Kale Dravien. Her cousin. She frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Kyle has no reason to harm me." Darius raised an eyebrow. "You're the heir to the throne. What happens? If you die?" She hesitated. "He becomes next in line." They exchanged a silent look. A family confrontation. Later that day, Elira requested Kale's presence in the East Garden, a private place where she could speak without the court overhearing. The garden was filled with silver-leafed trees and glowing blue flowers, a favorite spot from her childhood. Kale arrived wearing a polished black coat, his smile warm but his eyes calculating. "Cousin, you wish to see me?" "I did," Elira said. "Tell me, have you been in the security archives recently?" He tilted his head slightly. "Perhaps. I visit many places in the palace." "You accessed restricted guard schedules," she said, watching his face carefully. He didn't flinch. Instead, he laughed softly. "Are you accusing me of something, Elira?" "I am asking," she said, voice firm. Kyle stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You should be careful with such questions. They can make dangerous enemies." Before she could answer, Darius appeared from behind one of the trees. "Sounds like a threat to me," he said, his tone almost casual. Kale's eyes narrowed. "And who are you to interrupt family matters?" "I'm the one who keeps her breathing," Darius replied. Kyle smirked. "Then perhaps you should also keep her from chasing ghosts. Good day, princess." He left without another word, but Elira felt a chill in her chest. Evidence in the shadows that night, Darius woke her in her chambers. "Get dressed, quietly." She did as told, pulling on a plain travel cloak. "What is it?" she whispered. "I've been tracking comm signals." "In the palace," he said. "There's one active right now. It's going to an encrypted Dominion channel. I think I know where it's coming from." They moved through the palace silently, avoiding guard patrols. Darius led her to the West Tower, an old, unused part of the palace that had been closed for repairs years ago. Inside, the air smelled of dust and metal. They climbed narrow stairs to a room with its door half open. A faint blue light spilled out. Darius drew his pistol and stepped inside first. Elira followed, her eyes widening at what she saw. On a table sat a sleek Dominion transmitter, still, active. Data scrolled across its screen. Guard rotations, meeting schedules, and even Elira's personal itinerary for the next week. "Looks like we found our leak," Darius said grimly. Before they could examine it further, heavy footsteps echoed in the hall. They turned. Kyle stood in the doorway, flanked by two armed men in dark armor. The betrayal. Confirmed Kyle's voice was calm, almost polite. "I told you, cousin. Some questions are dangerous." Elira's throat felt tight. You've been working with the Dominion?" He shrugged lightly. "The Lithan Empire is weak. The Dominion offers strength, and they promise me the throne in exchange for cooperation." "You'd sell your people to invaders?" she demanded. "I'd save them from slow decay." Kyle replied coldly. "Under you, the Empire will fade. Under me, it will rise, with Dominion support." Darius took a step forward, weapon raised. "You're not walking out of here," Kale smirked. "I'm afraid you won't have the chance." "To stop me!" His guards opened fire. The fight in the tower. The room exploded into chaos. Plasma bolts seared through the air, smashing against the stone walls. Darius shoved Elira behind an overturned table and fired back, his shots precise. One of Kale's men went down, but the other kept advancing. Kale ducked into the hall, shouting, orders into a comm device. Darius rolled across the floor, grabbing a fallen rifle, and fired a burst that sent the last guard crashing into the wall. "Stay here," he ordered Elira. "No," she said, grabbing her blade. "He won't get." Away. They chased Kyle through the twisting halls of the West Tower. He moved quickly, clearly knowing every shortcut. At the base of the tower, they caught sight of him boarding a small stealth craft hidden in the courtyard. Darius fired, but the shot glanced off the craft's armor as it lifted into the night sky. Elira's fists clenched. "He's going to the Dominion fleet." Darius lowered his weapon slowly. "Then we'll follow him." The wound that changes everything before they could. An explosion rocked the palace. The shockwave threw both of them to the ground. Alarms blared, and smoke began to pour through the halls. "Bomb in the outer wall," Darius said, coughing. "He's opening the way for a full attack." They ran toward the command center, but halfway there, a squad of Dominion soldiers burst through a breached gate. Darius pushed Elira into cover and engaged them in brutal close combat, using elbows, knees, and short bursts from his pistol. One soldier broke through and charged at Elira. She raised her blade, but before she could strike, Darius intercepted the attacker, taking the full force of a plasma blade across his side. The soldier fell, but Darius staggered, blood soaking his uniform. Elira caught him before he collapsed. "You're wounded," he gritted his teeth. "I've had worse," her voice shook. "You nearly died." His eyes met hers, and there was something unspoken there, trust, maybe even something deeper. But before either could say more, the palace loudspeakers crackled to life. "Attention! Enemy fleet detected at the edge of Lithan space. All forces prepare for battle. The coming storm." They reached the command room, where the Emperor stood with his generals. The holographic map showed dozens of Dominion ships entering the system. "They're here for me," Elira said quietly. Her father's jaw tightened. "Then, we will make sure they never take you." Darius stepped forward, ignoring the blood on his side. "Your Majesty, you need to evacuate the princess. This palace will be a war zone within hours." "No," Elira said firmly. "If Kale is with them, then this is more than an invasion. It's a coup. I will not run while my people fight." The Emperor looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. You will remain, but under Kane's protection." Darius didn't argue, though his expression showed he wanted to. The room filled, with the sounds of officers giving orders, ships being mobilized, and weapons being armed. But Elira's thoughts were elsewhere, on her cousin's betrayal, on the Dominion's arrival, and on the human warrior who had just risked his life for hers. She turned to Darius. This is only the beginning. He gave a grim nod. Yeah, and the real fight is about to start. The palace bells still rang when Captain Darius Kane stepped into the royal command room. The space was a circle of glass walls, high above the city, giving a full view of the glowing spires below. Holographic screens floated in the air, showing reports from every district. Princess Elira was already there, standing beside her father, Emperor Talren. The emperor's expression was a mask of calm, but his eyes betrayed a spark of worry. What happened? Darius asked without ceremony. The Lithan commander in charge of security turned toward him. Small riots in the lower districts, fires in the industrial quarter, but the strange thing, he hesitated. They all began at the same time, as the assassination attempt. Darius crossed his arms. Coordinated. Someone's trying to stretch your forces thin while hitting the palace. The commander's jaw tightened at the human's direct tone, but he didn't deny it. Elira stepped forward. The dagger used against me was Dominion design. If the Dominion is involved, these riots may be a distraction for something worse. Her father nodded slowly. Agreed. I want full patrols in every district. And Captain Kane... He turned his gaze on Darius. Your priority is the princess. I'll keep her alive, Darius said. Elira's chin lifted. I can take care of myself. Not against a professional kill team, Darius replied. Your guards are good, but they think like soldiers in formation. Dominion operatives think like hunters. That's my world, princess. She disliked the way he called her that, as if it were half a joke, half a warning. But she could not deny the truth in his words. Culture clash. The following day, Darius and Elira began a tour of the palace's vulnerable areas, her idea to see for herself the weak points. The first stop was the East Wing, where the royal archives were stored. The halls were quiet, guarded by 2 Lithan soldiers in shining armor. Too obvious, Darius muttered as they passed the guards. What do you mean? Elira asked. Your guards stand like statues. Anyone watching knows exactly where they are and how to avoid them. Humans learned a long time ago, sometimes you need to hide your defenses. That is not our way, Elira replied. We show our strength openly. Darius glanced at her. And it gets you stabbed in your own palace. She glared at him, but deep down the words stayed with her. Later, they inspected the palace. Kitchens. The staff bowed as Elira entered, but they froze when they saw Darius. Humans were rare here, and his scarred face and tall frame drew every eye. One of the cooks whispered something in Lithan, and a few others chuckled. Elira caught the words, barbarian in a war suit. She expected Darius to ignore it, but he walked straight up to the cook and spoke in perfect accented Lithan. I've eaten things in war camps that would make you cry, but I have to admit, he pointed at a tray of steaming bread. This smells better than anything I've had in months. The cook's eyes widened in shock at his fluency. A moment later, the kitchen erupted in laughter, not at him, but with him. Elira watched quietly. He had turned an insult into a moment of connection without force or threat. She found it unsettling. The investigation by evening, reports from the riots began to arrive. Most were under control, but one district, the shadow markets, remained unstable. The shadow markets were known for black market trade, smugglers, and weapons. Dealers! That's where the Dominion tech probably came from, Darius said when he saw the report. If I were hiding an infiltration team, that's where I'd start. The Emperor looked at his daughter. Elira, you will remain in the palace. Kane will lead the search. No, she said firmly. If someone is targeting me, I should see the danger myself. Darius raised an eyebrow. That's not smart. It is my decision, she replied. He sighed. Fine, but you stay behind me at all times. They left the palace in a small armored transport, with 2 Lithan guards in front and Darius at Aelira's side. The shadow markets were a maze of narrow alleys, glowing signs, and thick crowds. Strange smells of alien food mixed with the sharp scent of metal and oil. "Eyes up," Darius murmured as they walked. "Too many people watching us." They passed stalls selling forbidden weapons, crates of illegal tech, and strange animals in cages. Aelira kept her expression calm, but her senses were on high alert. Suddenly, Darius stopped, his eyes locked on a small shop with its lights dimmed. "There," he said. They entered, and the air inside was cooler, almost sterile. A single Lithan stood behind the counter, pretending to clean a device, but Darius spotted the faint glow of Dominion circuitry in the corner. "Where'd you get that?" Darius asked, stepping closer. The shopkeeper hesitated, then tried to grab something under the counter. Darius slammed his hand down, pinning the alien's arm. "Talk," he growled. The shopkeeper's eyes darted to Aelira. "Princess, I had no choice. They said if I didn't hide their weapons, they'd burn. My family's home." "How many?" she asked sharply. "4," the shopkeeper whispered. "3 nights ago. Dominion armor, cloaked." Darius leaned in. "Where are they now?" Before the man could answer, a sharp whine filled the air, the sound of a plasma. "Rifle charging! The ambush down!" Darius shouted, grabbing Aelira and diving behind a stack of crates. A bolt of plasma scorched the wall where they had stood. The front window shattered as 2 figures in dark Dominion armor burst in, rifles blazing. The Lithan guards returned fire, but one fell with a cry as a bolt caught his side. Darius moved fast, pulling a compact human pistol from his belt. He fired twice. One enemy went down, the other ducked behind a shelf. Aelira drew the ceremonial blade she carried at her side. It was more symbolic than practical, but she held it with steady hands. The remaining attacker tried to retreat, but Darius was faster. He vaulted over the counter, slammed the enemy against the wall, and ripped the helmet off. The alien inside hissed, baring sharp teeth. "Who sent you?" Darius demanded. The attacker spat in his face. Darius wiped it away calmly, then knocked the alien unconscious with one punch. The shopkeeper trembled behind the counter. "They will come again," he whispered. "Yeah," Darius said grimly. "And next time, they won't be this sloppy." Dangerous truth back in the palace, the Emperor listened to their report in silence. When they finished, he turned to the head of intelligence. "Confirm the presence of Dominion operatives in our capital. Use all resources." Aelira watched her father, then spoke. "They are not acting alone. Someone inside our court is helping. Them." The room fell silent. Darius looked at her. "What makes you think that?" "The assassins knew exactly where I would be. They knew the palace guard rotations. And tonight, they found us in the shadow markets without following us. That means they had information before we left." The Emperor's face hardened. "If there is a traitor in this palace, we will find them." Darius studied Aelira for a long moment. She wasn't just a royal figurehead, she was sharp, calculating, and for the first time, he thought maybe she might actually be able to survive this. As they left the command room, Aelira walked beside him in silence. Finally, she said, "You were right. This is a hunt. But tell me, Captain, are we the hunters or the prey?" Darius gave her a thin smile. "That depends on how fast you're willing to learn." She didn't answer, but in her eyes he saw the spark of someone who might be ready to fight. The grand halls of the Lithan royal palace glowed with soft blue light. Tall crystal pillars rose high, their tips lost in the shadows of the ceiling. It was a place built to impress, to remind everyone who entered that the Lithan Empire had stood for thousands of years. Tonight it was filled with nobles, military leaders, and foreign diplomats. Princess Aelira walked with slow, graceful steps down the silver-carpeted aisle. Her silver and blue gown shimmered like the night sky, and the crown on her head was small but heavy with meaning. She kept her face calm, but inside, her thoughts raced. She had been told this evening was important. A diplomatic announcement. Her father had called it. She expected another trade deal or perhaps an alliance with a minor power. But when she entered the central chamber and saw the guests of honor, her heart froze. Humans. The last time she had seen a human in person was during the final months of the war against the Dominion of Scars. They had been soldiers, fierce, wild, unpredictable. Even now she could recall the way they fought, as if every battle was a personal challenge from the universe itself. The Lithen had respected their strength, but also feared their uncontrolled nature. At the front of the chamber stood a man who seemed to carry all those traits in his broad shoulders and sharp eyes. His black hair was cut short, his jawline sharp, and his expression unreadable. He wore a dark military uniform decorated with medals. This was no diplomat. This was a warrior. Her father, Emperor Talrin, rose from his throne. His voice carried through the hall. "Tonight," he began, "we honor an ancient promise. Centuries ago, when the Lithen Empire was at the edge of destruction, the humans of Earth came to our aid. A treaty was signed, one that would unite our two peoples in the time of greatest need." Elira frowned. She had studied Lithen history for years, but she had never heard of such a treaty. "That time," her father continued, "is now. The galaxy is not at peace, no matter what our enemies say. Shadows gather again. To ensure our survival, we will strengthen our bond with Earth." He turned to her, his eyes firm. "Princess Elira, you will marry the chosen champion of Earth." The crowd gasped. Elira's heart pounded in her chest. Marriage? To a human? Without her consent? The Emperor gestured toward the human man. "This is Captain Darius Kane of the Terran Defense Force, decorated hero of the Dominion War, the man chosen to stand by your side." Darius stepped forward. His voice was deep, steady. "Your Highness," he said with a small nod. He didn't bow, not the way Lithen custom demanded. Instead, he looked straight at her, his eyes sharp and direct. Elira's jaw tightened. She could feel the eyes of every noble in the room on her. Some looked shocked. Others looked curious. A few looked delighted at the scandal this would cause. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to tell her father this was madness. But the ceremony moved forward before she could speak. After the formal announcement, she was led to a smaller, private chamber where Darius was waiting. The guards closed the doors, leaving them alone. Elira folded her arms. "Do you understand? What has just happened?" she asked coldly. "I do," Darius replied. "I've been briefed." "Then you know I did not agree to this." He gave a small shrug. "Neither did I. My orders were simple. Report to the Lithen capital, accept the role, and protect you at all costs." "Protect me?" she repeated, her voice sharp. "From what?" Darius's expression darkened. "From whoever's planning to kill you." Before she could respond, the door burst open. A Lithen guard stumbled in, a deep burn across his chest. Behind him, a masked figure darted forward, holding a plasma dagger. Elira froze. The attacker was less than 3 meters away. Darius moved like lightning. In one smooth motion, he grabbed the heavy metal table beside him and shoved it into the assassin's path. The attacker stumbled and Darius lunged, tackling him to the ground. The dagger clattered across the floor. The assassin hissed in a strange language before biting down on something hidden in their mouth. Smoke burst from their lips, filling the room with a sharp metallic smell. When it cleared, the assassin was dead. Darius stood, breathing hard but steady. His eyes met Elira's. "That," he said, "is why I'm here. Guards rushed in, too late to stop the attack. The captain of the guard bowed deeply to Elira. "Princess, forgive us. This should not have happened inside the palace." Elira's mind was spinning. An assassination attempt here, on the very night of the treaty announcement. This was no coincidence. Darius picked up the plasma dagger, turning it in his hands. "This isn't Lythan make," he said. "It's Dominion tech. And that means your enemies aren't just political rivals. They're people who start wars." She stared at him. For the first time, she noticed the way he stood, ready for danger at any moment, eyes scanning every shadow. This was a man who had lived his whole life in battle. "I will not be used as a pawn," she said firmly. "Then don't be," Darius replied. "But if you want to live long enough to decide your own path, you're going to need me." Her pride screamed to reject him. Her training told her to stay in control. But deep inside, a small voice whispered that he was right. Outside the chamber, the palace bells began to toll, a warning signal. Somewhere in the city, more trouble was unfolding. Elira glanced at the door, then back at Darius. "This is only the beginning, isn't it?" she asked. He gave her a grim smile. "Yeah. And it's gonna get worse."